Tubers, Tubets, and of course my favorite group of all, the crazy people. My friend Jason is soon to join us here, and he is going to be bailing out of the Philippines in the near future. Why? It's not the usual reasons. It has to do with a whole lot of stuff that very other people even bother thinking about. So if that tickles your fancy, stay tuned, and we'll be coming up in a second with my buddy Jason. All right, so as I said in the introduction, I had zero clue that my buddy here was leaving the Philippines. And so without further ado, Jason, why don't you take it away and tell the folks why?
Why I'm leaving the Philippines. Well, let me start before I get into the why, to say that I love it here. I really love it. I've got pretty extensive experience living in Southeast Asia. I lived in Vietnam for 7 years, and then in Thailand for 4 years, and went home back to the States for about almost, well, 5 years, close. And then I'm back here. I've been here for 2 years now. I love it. This is my absolute favorite.
So you've been here for 2 years, and
Yes.
out of all the Asian countries, this is the one, if someone put a gun to your head and said you have to live here for the rest of your life, it would be the Philippines.
It would be a big smile.
Okay, all right,
Yeah, big
cool.
smile. Yeah, absolutely.
So well, we got together over Thanksgiving, and we were just shooting the breeze, and you said, yeah, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And I didn't see that one coming. I thought you were a keeper. I thought you were a guy that was digging in and you were loving life, but you've got other ideas. And I don't know if it's the Philippines that's turning you off, but then you were talking something about China and you didn't feel safe. And so I don't want to put words in your mouth, and I don't know what words they would be, 'cause I don't know what you're thinking. So why don't you explain to me and my buddies out there in YouTubeville?
All righty. Well, thanks. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about things that I'm interested in. I appreciate that. We're going to have to walk down two paths, and part of it is what my life is doing and where I'm going with my life, and that's the least interesting, I think. So I have business interests. I do research and development in the underlying root cause of obesity.
Correct.
So not how to lose weight, but why do people gain the weight back? Why are they obese in the first place? And I have solved that problem. I've done 3 years of research. Almost all of it was done here in Southeast Asia, and so I need to take that back to the States where I can build that business.
Okay, so there's motivation number one.
Yes, but that is not enough motivation to make me move.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
All right.
If that was the only thing, I would be fine staying here because I can do.
You can make that work here.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. Online presence, etc. I could absolutely make that work. So, but that's just a personal thing that's adding to it.
All right.
The other thing is, I also am a student, but a long-time student of macroeconomics and geopolitics. Now, I don't give a rat's patootie about the politics. I didn't like either one of them. I still don't like either one of them. I hope I pissed off a whole bunch of folks.
No, that was pretty diplomatic.
No, both of them are going to make really horrible mistakes, and both of them would have made good things.
Okay.
Very, very different perspectives.
Yeah, two different human beings doing two different things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so, that's
out of the way.
Yeah, that's out of the way. But that's politics, not geopolitics. And geopolitics are about what's going on with not just the war in Ukraine, but what happens as that war unravels or winds down. What's going on with the daisy chain, if you will? What happens? You and I were just talking off camera a minute ago about the German economics.
Right.
Well, one piece of their real big problem right now, and their economics, for those who are not paying attention to it, and why would you, but is Germany's in deep shit as far as economics. Great country, great people. They're in deep, deep, deep poo.
Car companies primarily, right? Or everybody?
Everybody in Germany, and one of the
Not
big...
just the car industry.
Not just the car industry.
Okay.
They're real quickly, they have two big hits that are happening to them right now, which is going to play back into our conversation later about China, is demographics. The Chinese demographics is the worst demographic profile in the world. Then Russia, then Germany is somewhere in the top 5 of horrible demographics. What that means is there's not enough young people coming up that are learning the trades, doing the things that we love about German engineering and automobiles. there's nobody taking the older place. So the average worker is no longer 30, now they're 50 or 55.
It seems to be a worldwide, I don't mean to interrupt you, but that seems to be going on all over the place.
It's going on.
Japan is a massive, I think it's number one gap. I don't know, you would, but I hear on TV, Japan's got this huge elderly population, and then the people that don't want to have babies or can't afford it, all that. So sorry to interrupt.
Absolutely, no, you nail it, because Japan has been in the news about their bad demographics for 30 years. Japan is different than almost every other country, but yes, all of the developed world, not some, all.
America?
America, absolutely. Everybody who's developed. So that's all of Western
developed
Europe.
countries are having a problem with an aging population.
Yes, absolutely.
And a lack of people to replace them.
That's right.
Okay.
America, just you mentioned
Even
them.
I got to figure it out.
Yeah. We have not had replacement birth population in America since the 70s. It goes back that far. And a person that was born in 1970, well, they're 50 years old today. In their 50s.
Yeah.
So it's not like you don't know what's going to happen. You just wait long enough and it does. So that's a big, big issue for Germany. They just don't have people coming up to support it.
Okay.
The second big thing, which is the daisy chain out of the Ukraine war, was that the Nord Stream pipeline was ruptured and destroyed, and they no longer have inexpensive electricity. They have to, because the propane that was coming in, or not propane, but liquid gas that was coming in, natural gas, I'll stutter around finding it. Natural gas that was coming in was cheap from Russia, but that's gone. That will never return. So everything that requires energy costs more in Germany at a time when their population density is becoming a problem, etc. So this is a real big issue for them. Broad sweep, that creates an economic destruction. And when you look at that, that's kind of the geopolitics that I pay attention to.
Germany, what the hell's that got to do with the price of rice and leaving the Philippines?
Everything. Germany does not. Germany does not. But I just wanted to kind of explain why, what's going on in my head.
Okay.
Alrighty. So, where are we right now? Well, this population issue is really, really, really big with China. Now, please bear with me. I'm going to have to lay a couple things out to pull this together.
No worries.
Okay, so we've got, you're going to say?
I said no worries.
Oh, good, good. Alrighty. So you've got this population demographic pressure. In China today, there are more 50-year-olds than there are 40, than 30, than 20, than etc. And the smallest demographic group right now is the 5 and under. They're the tiniest. And they are well past any theoretical way that they can repopulate.
I've heard that. Aren't they like 10 years away from collapse? Isn't that about right?
Demographically, yes.
Okay,
yes,
all right.
And you see there, 10 years from now, you're going to have more 60-somethings, and the pyramid keeps getting smaller.
Like
smaller.
Japan does.
Like Japan.
Okay, all right.
Big difference, and this actually is important in this conversation. The huge, huge, huge difference between Japan, which is the oldest society in the world. They're older than China, but China's nipping at their heels, is that when Japan recognized they had this problem, they changed their corporate structure. And what they did was they said, okay, we're going to make things, whatever the things are, where we sell them. So they moved their Toyota factory to the deep south in America, et cetera, et cetera. They put factories around the world.
Okay.
They could do that because they were already rich. They were a rich country. Their per capita, GDP, whatever, was real high. It was, up close to America's. But China does not have that. Now, China is approaching the same level of aging that Japan is, and they're going to collapse. They're all the problems, but they're poor. And we think of them, and they are the second largest economy, but that's because they have this enormous demographic. They're huge, 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 all that. So altogether, they're enormous. But individually, the Chinese person is poor. They're still living at what we used to call third world or poverty level. They don't have the wherewithal. and their manufacturing, you hear that China is the manufacturer of the world, but their manufacturing is at the bottom tier. So you've got that thing that is low level, easy to do, low technology, etc. That's
shoes and shirts.
Shoes and shirts and assembly of what seems to be high tech, but it isn't. You're assembling televisions, meaning you're snapping the parts together.
Okay.
They're made somewhere else and you just snap them together. You go to Mexico to get your cars made. That's the mid-level manufacturing, and it takes a higher trained person to run the machinery and do all the things. They don't have that in China. Then you get to the top level of manufacturing, which is how do you make a chip, etc. And the engineering and all that comes out of two places in the world primarily. Most of it, United States and Taiwan, and engineering from Japan. So China, there's no way in hell can they transition to where they can build it where it's sold. They can't do that. They don't have the money, they don't have the education, the population won't do it. And because their population is shrinking, they don't have the consumer base. When you're in your 30s and 40s, everybody here will recognize that. I assume most of your reader or your followers are
near death.
Look kind of like us.
Near death.
Okay,
yes.
All right, they look like us. By the way, I'm older than he is.
Hello.
Old, not dead. So, you can remember when you were in your 30s and 40s, that's when you're buying your cars, you were buying your houses, you were putting money away for school or buying school kids, bicycles and everything.
Right.
Those are your big consumption years.
Right.
When you're in your 50s and 60s, well, the house is pretty much paid for. Everything tapers off, right.
And so now again, I'm confused why all these things going on, the demographics is tweaking you on the Philippines.
Yes, well.
Coming up, right?
Coming up,
okay.
Coming up. But yeah, so I said, you got to bear with me as I go through the daisy chain and keep reminding me.
Okay.
So I'm happy to do that. All righty. China is in economic trouble. And I could give off a whole bunch of other stats about their economics. I won't do it. Just trust me on this. Their demographics are horrible. Their credit within their country is as bad as their demographics. They are in deep, deep, deep trouble. And that's when you said you've heard that they're going to collapse within 10 years. And I was right there with you, yes.
Okay.
So you have an economic, societal collapse. What does that do to the government? That's when you have one of two things. You either crack down, you close the country, or you have a regime change.
And what scares you?
Well, the regime change, and we have the CCP, which is the Chinese Communist Party, and they are in danger of the people going for a long walk, which is a way of saying the people going on a rebellion. And China has a deep history, not the last 100 years, when Mao came in the late 40s and they had the Civil War after World War II was over, but thousands of years, they have thousands of regime changes. This is part of that, and a lot of other things go on, but that's what I see coming. Now, this is where we sit today. All right, China, as you dig into it, and I follow people who have, I don't personally do it, but I follow them, the China Navy and the China military is nothing but smoke and mirrors. It's crap. They have 600 vessels in their Navy. We have like 200. But they have 1.5 aircraft carriers. The first one was a Soviet, not casino, but a cruise ship that they bought and modified and put a deck on top of it. The second one's a clone of the first one. The third one is non-operational. So they're just trying to figure out how to do an aircraft carrier. All the rest of their Navy, if an American ship is this big, their Navy is this big. They're bathtub boats. And the importance of that is that they are non-ocean going. So they can't go out across the sea. They've got like 800, 1,000 miles maximum, going at a slow speed at a straight line, and that is a non-warfare situation. Okay, so they can't go and attack somebody, they can't get into that kind of a relationship in a shooting war with anybody other than what's local. But the CCP may need to do that because as your economy collapses, as your people become increasingly dissatisfied, as you have more and more social problems, the government has to do one of two things. They either have to crack down on everything or distract you. Historically, America is we don't get out of this trap. Everybody does it historically, and I'm talking thousands of years. Start a war, and now everybody gets together. You and your brother and sisters are all arguing and fighting, but the neighbor comes over and starts calling your mom a nasty name. Everybody joins up, and you fight the neighbor.
Okay.
It's in our nature. It's in our DNA.
So you're saying that you're feeling war is imminent with China
I'm saying
and the
that
United States.
Imminent, I wouldn't use the term imminent, but I would say it's an absolute possibility.
Okay, what has that got to do with the Philippines?
Everything. You've got, now in the news, what you hear is Taiwan, 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 right?
I do.
Okay. But Taiwan is big. It's a big thing. But what you don't hear, other than if you don't live in the Philippines, is Spratly Islands. You don't hear about that. The Thomas Shoal. You don't hear about that. But China and the Philippines Coast Guard are out there. They're literally bumping into each other.
Correct.
That's a sea collision. And their Chinese soldiers, Navy, are water canning the Filipinos.
They are.
And so this is a crazy situation. The Filipinos are holding their ground. They're being Filipino about it, which those of you who don't know the Filipino culture is they are very gentle people as a rule. But you put anybody back against the wall and they'll fire back.
Sure.
Filipinos, their demeanor. But there are also plenty of, here's where the rub comes. Let's say you get the wrong Filipino captain on a full-size Coast Guard ship and the wrong Chinese captain on a full-size Coast Guard ship, Chinese Coast Guard, and they're out there messing around and doing all the nasty. And one of the Chinese guys was more likely to be a Chinese than a Filipino. I just grabbed him because of their culture, but it could be either side. Does something really stupid like shoot somebody. Well, that's a firearm. Okay, that's a whole escalation. And when that happens, if the other side retaliates and you get a little bit of back and forth, you might kill 1 or 2 or 3 people. In a 1 million people population, that means nothing, right? But it means everything because America and the Philippines have a peace treaty, actually a war treaty, if you will, that says that if another nation has a hostile act and they're identifying hostility as a kinetic war or kinetic thing, in other words, that shooting that gun, shooting the water cannon, no. Shooting the rifle, yes.
What about bumping into them? Because I keep hearing that they're knocking them. They're knocking the fishermen. They're knocking the.
But Paul, would you hit me for that?
Right,
would you hit me back for that?
Right.
If I did it again, how about if I did it again?
I get it.
You see,
they're just showing who's the big dog out in the water.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
And this has been going on for several years.
So, are you scared that China is going to be coming into the Philippines?
If that occurs.
Not scared, but are you?
Am I concerned?
Concerned is a better word.
If that occurs, and it's a big if, right? But it is, I see the Philippines as the most potential for a flashpoint. I don't see Taiwan as the flashpoint because you got to invade a whole island. You got to do all that stuff. Your military has to build up. There's a lot of moving pieces, and we will see it. Our spy planes, our satellites, whatever. We'll see all that, just like we saw Russia building up in Belarus for months before they moved into Ukraine. You'll see it. But something kicking off a flashpoint in something where the boats are bumping together, they're water canning, they're doing all this nonsense. Posturing. But if something stupid happens and the Filipinos go, hey, you killed us, and they go out and escalate. It could just...
Now, what motivation would China have for occupying, invading, or going to war, pick your choice, with the Philippines?
Oil.
Is it just strategic?
The whole thing is oil. There's
we
two.
don't make oil. Or Philippines doesn't
No,
make
the Spratly
oil.
Islands are full of oil.
Okay, I don't know that.
Yeah, the Spratly Islands has enormous oil reserves, and they're not developed yet, but it is well within the Philippine international border, water line. It's like 10, 15 miles or whatever, the short distance off the coast of one of the main islands. And it's part of the island chain that is recognized as part of the Philippines. So they want that. And that whole island chain is what Vietnam is engaged in, is about the oil. It's all about the oil. And understand, why is it so important? Well, China is oil dependent. They import at least 75% of their oil energy, which then creates 75% of their electricity.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're rapidly changing over to nuclear, but rapidly changing over to nuclear is like waiting for your 5-year-old to get married.
So is this
years.
situation that you're explaining and illustrating for us, was that enough to make you say, I think it's better off that I'm in America?
It's the
health,
kicker.
for your safety?
It's the kicker, yeah. It's not
Okay.
isolated, but here's the next level is, okay, let's say it does kick off.
Okay.
And we've grown up with, they bombed the embassy in this country or that, and what do we see is we see 3 big jets fly into the country, and everybody all Americans, let's go, let's go, let's go. You got 24 hours to get on the plane. Well, I don't want to be in that situation. Now, part of that, for me, why not? So what? But I'm engaged, and I'm going to get married, and I'm getting married to a Filipina, delightful woman, and I don't want to be in a situation where there's a hostile kinetic war here, and I'm back in the States, and she can't get out. Because if that happens, let's say I'm just going to make up a number, let's say there's 5,000 Filipinos a week in the whole Philippines that apply for a visa.
Okay.
If China kicks off and the next day, the American embassy says, everybody exit, that 5,000 a week will go to 150,000. Just everybody will rush trying to get out.
I think I figured it out. I think that what you're looking at, and you're doing something that I do on a lot of situations, is you've taken it to the worst case scenario. And you said, what if this, and this happens?
Yes.
Not that it's going to happen.
Not that it's going to.
You're telling people, oh, this is going to happen.
No, I'm laid out a daisy chain of
possibilities.
possibilities. Yeah.
Okay. But you're
fools.
saying these are scenarios that are possible.
Yes.
Some are more likely than others.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, I think it is that you came over here, you set up shop, you fell in love with the country, you fell in love with a woman, you found the woman of your dreams, and you want her to live with you in America.
The rest of my life,
The rest of your life.
Yes.
And you're, like me, you're in the winter of your life, and you've got a place set up already there, and you want to...
that was about the winter of my life.
Oh, stop it. You guys in denial, okay?
Yeah.
Where was I? You're gonna go back to what, Montana?
Montana, yes, yeah.
And that's like where all the nuclear silos are. So good choice on that.
Yeah. Well, that's why we probably
war.
won't stay. Yeah. I'm going back to Montana because I own a home there.
Okay.
Yeah, I own a home.
So you're not going to be financially impeded by going over there. All right. This is not an economic decision.
No.
In fact, you told me that your primary reason for coming over here was to find a significant other.
Yes.
And
yes.
actually one day in the back of your mind, go back to America anyway.
Yes.
Has this just accelerated that process?
It was 2 things. One, it was the tipping point for that decision.
Okay.
Because I was open to staying here.
Okay.
Yeah. I like I said, I spent 11 years between Vietnam and Thailand.
Yeah.
And I love Southeast Asia. I really, really, really like the Philippines. Just my choice. Head and shoulders above the others.
All right.
And so I could see myself living here.
Right.
You know,
Right.
Not a problem.
Okay.
And buying land, building a house, getting cheated out of money, rebuilding the house.
Yes, thank you.
So, but no, I can see myself and doing that. Absolutely. It's that as I followed geopolitics.
These are my friends.
No problem. Glad for the dig.
Yeah. Paul.
Let me get that knife out. And so, no, I could see that. It's just that this was tipped it over to the decision. Cool. And then the more I pay attention,
all right,
and the more I've studied demographics, and these things were not on my radar when I got here.
Okay. You know what? I can't say I disagree with your thinking. You've taken it to the nth degree.
Yep.
I know that you could make more money back in America, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Your house is free and clear. You're all set up there, so you don't have any economic issues, big overhead.
No.
You're a minimalist anyway, like, you know. Hell, I thought my house was shitty, okay? Wait till you see his place. And so,
just the termites.
There you go, there's your
termites, yes. Oh, ow.
And so, yeah, and the tourist thing makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a pain in the ass to get somebody out of here because you're not going to be doing the fiance thing, are you?
I am doing the fiance.
Oh, you're doing?
Yeah.
Well, then that's a different tune.
Yeah.
Okay, a tourist is tough. In fact, a guy that I know that knows a guy that knows a guy says that they automatically turn down the first application for a tourist. Just automatic no.
Yeah.
And then you got to fight for it from there.
Yeah.
But on the fiance visa, you do the right things with the right people, fill out the right forms, you've got a really good chance of making that work. And then you get married in 90 days.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And that's what you want to do.
Yes.
Now, on the flip side of all that, Jason, I think that it's fair to say that I am in no way, shape, or form, I'm disappointed to say that I'm going to see you go because you are what I consider to be, you know, one of my 5 friends, you know, those guys that you can count on one hand.
Yeah.
You're one of those dudes.
Where do we bury the body?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to miss you. That's kind of a selfish thing, but at the same time, I'm happy for you. And the same applies for when you land here or you go back home. None of us land with our feet in cement. And so you might go back to America in good old Montana, over there with all the nukes, and sit there with your woman, and she gets a job, and you do your thing, and whatever you guys do, and after a year, you decided, I made the wrong decision. This is not what I thought. China settled down. This thing that you're talking about didn't come out, didn't play out like you thought. At least you got, you know what you're walking into if you decide to come back.
Yeah.
And there's no saying you can't come back and visit or whatever. So
actually, that's very much on our radar.
I think that more and more guys are starting to push the envelope to going back home. There's a lot of guys, there's that 7-year itch. I'm at that 7-year point. I'm not at the point where I want to go home. But I think that there's going to come a time where I've had enough of having enough. You know, because the Philippines, with all of its allure, its culture and whatnot, once you've got a significant other like you and I do, that we get along with and we blend in with so well, and there's just so little angst, you know, during it's
easy.
so different than what it was when you're married to, you know,
no
Karen.
idea. Yeah.
And so, since that's 80% of your time anyway, and you're retired, if you can find, for me, it would be an economic challenge. For you, you're in much better position because of the paid off house and all that kind of stuff, plus your income is higher than mine. So you're in better shape that way. But that would be something that I think a lot of guys, just by natural selection, they're starting to say, you know what, I'm a little burnt out on the Philippines. Have you felt that way?
I mean, have not.
You haven't?
No, but I remember I was already 10 years in Southeast Asia.
That's true.
And so I came here knowing about poor infrastructure, knowing about termites in the rafters. Knowing
it doesn't wear on you?
It doesn't, no.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But hang on. Not only did I spend 10 years in Southeast Asia, I grew up in what we call poverty in America.
Yeah,
so I didn't
this guy's
have
never lived in Beverly Hills. Anywhere.
Yeah. So we rode the bus. We didn't even have cars. That kind of thing. So that was my childhood. So I don't have that natural position of, oh, this is terrible. Dang. You know, and, so I'm a little unique, and I just want to add that because I know things that irritate 90% of the people from the West don't irritate me. Okay. So I have to kind of recuse myself.
No, that's cool. That. Yeah. I mean, I am the same way. I can die here easily.
Yeah. I'm not as laid back as you are, by the way. You've got a much calmer demeanor in life.
Not when I stub my toe.
Oh, yeah.
But we're both pretty chill guys. I've never seen you upset or lose your cool or anything like that. We've got Goldfinger. He does enough for both of us.
Yes.
He's our buddy.
He's our buddy. He's a great guy.
He
does get wound up.
Yeah, and he's dictated my entire schedule for tomorrow. So,
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm glad you came on and went
Thanks
over
for
some
having
of the
me.
macro stuff on here
Yeah.
because I don't understand it, but I know what you're saying. Now, I do have a final question. Is since all of the first world countries, including the one you're going back to, America, has this issue, do you see the same problem happening in America that you're describing with China? and
No, I
Japan?
don't, actually.
And why? What's the difference?
Thanks for asking, and I'll try to keep it short.
Oh, that's
Everybody, I'll try to keep this short. Okay.
there's only 6 people hung in this far anyway.
That's great. Yeah, okay, good. Well, for you, all 6 of you.
Yeah, for all of you.
Okay, it's a complex thing, just with a couple really important moving pieces. One, globalism. I know why I talk about that. Well, see, globalism was not a thing until after World War II, and globalism is because America, which was by far the richest country. I mean, America country had more money than the rest of the world by double. I think 3 times more money in one country than the whole world. Shocking. Well, we said, okay, all of you all in Europe, the Western, which now is the NATO countries, we said, you guys all band together. You hook up together arm in arm, and you protect us from the big bad Soviets. So
Right.
we don't have to go to war with them. And in return, by the way, it wasn't us joining with you. It's you guys, and we'll step back. You're our first. Okay, so but what we'll do in return is we will, because we have the only existing blue water navy that
Right.
can go out into the oceans. Everybody else's navy was, at the bottom of the ocean.
Correct.
So we did that. We patrolled the oceans. Growing up, you never heard of anything about piracy. But in the 90s, you started to hear a little bit about, Somalia pirates have taken over an oil tanker. And now, just last year, I think it was Iran or Iraq or one of those guys, a sovereign nation commandeered 2 oil tankers and said, you guys did something naughty, we're taking your ship. You ran over a fishing vessel or something.
Right.
Sovereign nations are pirating. And that's the indication of that, and I'm just building a case for what I'm going to say here, is that America no longer wants to be the policeman of the world, which means as that falls down, now what does globalism do? This is just a key important part, is that any nation, anywhere in the world can trade with anybody at any time, because your stuff can get back and forth easy. See, before World War II, it was imperialism, and British was the best example, but it was many of them. They had deep water navy that could go back and everywhere, but they had also and that was their commercial ships, even though they're sailing ships, and they also had a navy to go along and protect them. So France couldn't come up and just take their stuff, because France would, but the navy was a strong navy, so they fought. That was imperialism. So you go out and you say, okay, the Spaniards came here and said, Philippines, you're now our colony, and we're going to take everything from you. We just rape you for resources and money. That was imperialism. Well, globalism operated completely differently. Everybody can trade with everybody free and easily. That's going away by leaps and bounds. For the last 30 years, the American population has increasingly said, we don't want to do that. We don't want to spend our money to bring our troops home, just the average person. I was guilty of saying that. Not guilty, but I said it. And so that's happening. We have closed bases, etc., and we no longer have near as many treaties as we had before. Feels like we have a lot of people out there, but we don't, not compared to what we had in the 50s and 60s and 70s. In the 80s it started coming back. Well, every president since, including Reagan, has been a populist president, and they go on what the population wants, not what is the best policy necessarily. They're often the same thing. But the American people do not want to police the world, and the politicians are saying, okay, the next phase, not for you and me, but the next phase is a 100-year or longer cycle, and it will be regionalism. So you'll trade with your neighbors instead of we will no longer buy cotton from Egypt. They have the best cotton in the world. we will no longer buy oranges from Egypt. And Egypt will have to start buying its own wheat.
And that's where America is going to skip the impending doom that you see.
The impending doom, exactly. Now, we have our treaties and what have you, but we're getting resources from Canada. We are the top tier manufacturer and the richest, and then right below us is Mexico. Which is the top level of that intermediate. They're the best manufacturers in the world.
Right.
We can integrate geographically. So that puts us in a great
What's your
position.
time frame on this? When are you hitting the airport?
The last piece of this.
Okay.
And this is why I went through that whole thing.
By the way, folks, war bonds will be on sale after the video.
Cheaply. No, the last thing is, you see populations are shrinking everywhere. Everywhere.
Yeah.
But we gave up our industrial base to everybody who would build a car or anything else. But now to become this whole vertical thing, we have to rebuild. We have to put in steel plants. We have to put in aluminum factories. We have to do all this stuff as well as... So we're going to be building all of this basic industrial complex plus our connection with all of the manufacturing and resources. And what that says is those plants will be giving us our products, etc. And what does that really mean? That means that our grandchildren, those of you who are younger than me, and the old guy here, your kids, your grandkids, your great-grandkids will be in the place where our grandparents were in America.
That's pretty strong.
That's huge. So,
That's a strong statement, my friend.
Yep. We won't be the dominant world economic powerhouse like we were, but nobody will be. It'll be regional, regional, regional. But we have an enormously bright future for everybody who stays in the States.
Got another question for you.
Yeah.
We're going to be in that position, and what's your time frame? Give me a rough one.
Globalism has been dying for the last 20 years, and I think, like anything, the stock market takes the escalator up and the elevator down, and we are at that place. Stalin said, you go decades where nothing happens, then you go weeks where decades happen. And I think we're at the precipice of those decades.
Okay.
Economically speaking, we're going to go into what I expect is a deflationary cycle that will last 1 to 2 years, call it 18 months. And that's coming up when you start watching the stock market as it starts collapsing mid-25. 18 months, be a really bad time. But then the Fed, and not our Fed, but everybody globally, will give stimulus, stimulus, stimulus. And that is, I think, the last leg of the economics that we're in. We're in a 42-year economic cycle, and we're at the froth at the end of it. It always gets real frothy. When we come out of that, sometime in the 30s, early 30s, 30, 31, 32, maybe 35, but somewhere in that first part of the 30s, we will have to reset the currencies of the world will reset.
And you were saying earlier that you think that the Philippines is at its precipice right now.
Yes.
Economically.
Economically, yes, I do.
Because I've seen it bounce huge since I've been here.
Yeah.
I mean, first 2 years, everything was just hunky-dory. Mm-hmm. And then it just went psycho.
And
easy financing, easy money, cars.
Yes.
There used to be no cars on the road. When I say no cars, you'd see the occasional car. Mm-hmm. For 2 years. Almost 2 years to the day, I started seeing everybody driving a brand new Land Cruiser or a Toyota or a whiz-bang SUV. And these weren't foreigners. These were your local guys, And financing got very easy, very loose. They took advantage of it. They didn't understand what they were signing. Mm-hmm. A lot of them get repoed, all that hoo-ha. But that was an interesting comment that you made about the Philippines, that it's kind of like it's not a pyramid, but it's more of a dome. Mm-hmm. And it's at the peak right now, and it's going to go down also.
Absolutely.
So these are your predictions.
Yes.
So these are predictions by Jason. Feel free to disavow
or ask questions.
Anything that he's saying in here.
Tell me I'm full of it.
Tell him he's full of shit.
Paul will tell it. He'll get it back to me.
I'll talk about my dogs and you'll complain. So I can only imagine the comments this is going to elicit. But that's what we like to do on the channel here. We like to elicit a little emotion.
Yep.
And we like to get people's attention. And we like to spark a little controversy. But it's not really controversial. It's just one man's opinion and his
By the way, I'm
prediction.
right.
And and humble.
And humble. Exactly. Thank you.
All right, kids. We'll see you in the next video. Jason, thanks for coming along.
Paul, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me here.
See you, kids.